for you all. What is, or who is, the best turtle ever? Somebody said Donatello, clearly they're wrong, so I'm sorry about that. Now, what is the best piece of cutlery ever designed? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. It's Mr. Townsend Coleman! I like the
best piece of cutlery ever, huh?
Yeah!
Very clever. It's a fork!
What?
Fork! No. Spoon! Indeed.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I was here 2 years ago. Seen a lot of familiar, friendly faces. It's great to be back. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Thanks for hosting up.
Yeah.
Good weekend?
Tigers.
Yeah, you and me both.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Townsend is back. We have a run out of the microphone, so we're going to start off this interview. But if you want to ask any questions, stick your hand in the air, wave it like you just don't care. Come on. Come on, yeah. Right, so, it's been 2 years.
2 years.
How's it been? What have you been up to?
It's been good. I've been working. You know, I'm not doing a whole lot of animation so much anymore. People have been asking me this weekend what's been keeping me busy, and I do a lot of network promos. I voice a lot of network TV promos, and back in the States was the voice of NBC for 16 years from 1993. In fact, the very first month that I did my first episode of The Tick, I also did my very first promo for NBC and a thing they call Must-See TV. Ended up being with NBC for 16 years. They got rid of me in almost 5 years ago, 2009. And I'm now with ABC. And I do a lot of stuff for them, for ABC Family as well, for the Hub, and a lot of the Hasbro shows. Sentinel Prime I was doing, and My Little Pony, and a lot of that kind of stuff. And also the Judge Judy promos and the live Let's Tell You Michael promos every day. Probably a lot of shows that you guys haven't heard over here. But yeah,
it sounds like you're keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, been very busy. The only problem with it is all my work now is work that I do from my house, in my closet, by myself, and I never go anywhere. Yeah.
So, okay then, let's take it back for all of those people who weren't here 2 years ago who didn't get to do your talk then.
All right. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not even going to try today.
All right then.
Are you making a good again? No?
You me? No. Yes, so 2 years ago.
I'm tired. Yeah, so, tell us a little bit then. What was your background? Where did you grow up? And how did you become an actor?
Oh, goodness. Well, I was born in New York City and actually grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. And many years ago, 30 years ago, decided that I wanted to quit the radio career that I had there. I was a DJ in Cleveland for 10 years and was doing a lot of acting ever since I was in high school. And doing a lot of local theater and modeling and voiceover work and TV work, and pretty much did everything I could within the entertainment industry in Cleveland. And then finally decided when I was done with radio that I wanted to get out of Cleveland and move to either New York or LA. It was kind of a crapshoot. I had some friends who convinced me that LA was the right move. And so literally 30 years ago, exactly right now, 30 years ago, moved to Los Angeles. And was the original plan was to go out there and pursue a career in movies and TV and stuff, be an actor. And got an agent in very short order. My first week in town, got really lucky. And within 6 months, all of a sudden, I got my first little part in a movie with Tommy Lee Jones. It's called Black Moon Rising. I played the part of a waiter, had 2 lines. Oh my God, they're stealing the cars. And did my first national network TV spot on camera, but also had an audition for my first cartoon, something that I had never thought about doing before, was animation. And my agent sent me on an audition for a show called Inspector Gadget. And I thought, well, this is kind of fun, interesting, because at the time I had 3 little kids, and my kids, when we were back in Ohio, used to watch Inspector Gadget, so I was somewhat familiar with the show. And so I went on this audition, and they were looking for a character for the last 10 episodes of the series. It was Inspector Gadget's right-hand man, his little assistant, named Corporal Capeman.
Anybody remember?
It was what you remember.
Yeah.
So crazy that everybody remembers the character. It seemed like a real minor character to me, but a short little kid with thick glasses and wore a helmet and a cape and rode a tricycle around and had big buck teeth and said, "I'll help you, Inspector Gadget. I'll save you. Don't you worry." Thank you. So I went on this audition, and what they do is they show you a picture of the character, give you some sample lines, tell you a little description about what the character is. And I thought, how might this be? I thought, the picture they showed me, to me, sounded like that. And so I did that. They laughed, and I ended up booking the part. And I found myself in this wacky world of animation, never having ever given any thought to doing animation before. And there in my very first session in Burbank, California, in 1980, in the spring of 1985, there were 4 of us in the studio, my very first session. And it was Maurice LaMarche, who I know you all are familiar with, as the Brain, Particular Brain, and just a billion other characters, of course. And he was on the tick as the evil midnight bomber that bombs at midnight.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
He was doing a great Sam Kinison on there. But it was Maurice LaMarche's first cartoon show as well. He was Chief Quimby on that. So there's Maurice LaMarche, and then sitting next to him, just to my left, was a gentleman named Frank Welker.
Never heard of him.
Yeah.
Not sure if I've heard of him.
Yeah, right. And, well, the strange thing, I hate to admit this, but back in those days, I hadn't heard of him. I didn't know who he was because I just wasn't familiar with, these voice actors who were doing animation. And so there's Frank sitting next to me, and then me, and then to my right was Don Adams, who was Inspector Gadget. And I was a little starstruck because it was Don that I recognized from Get Smart, and also Tennessee Tuxedo. Go Gadget Compton. And so I thought, well, this is great. But I remember when my kids used to watch the show in the back when we were in Ohio, just 6 months earlier, that there was a character on the show named Dr. Claw who had this just enormous voice. And I always kind of wondered in the back of my mind when I hear it on in the background, who this actor could be that was doing this character. And I looked at Mo, and I thought, well, it can't be him. And I looked at Frank sitting next to me, and I thought, well, it can't be him. And I knew it wasn't Don Adams. So I figured it was some other actor, some big, enormous guy who wasn't at the session that day, and they were just going to pick up his lines live at another time. So we start doing the first 3 through the show. I'd never done this before, and I'm watching them. They're all just circling their lines. So I just walk, circle mine too. And I see that there's a Dr. Claw line coming up several pages in. I figured we would just skip over it. So we're reading through, we get to that, and just as I'm thinking we're about to skip over the Dr. Claw line, all of a sudden, Frank opens his mouth, and out of his face, I'll get you next time, Gadget.
Ooh.
Next time. Very nice.
It must be all wrong.
Yeah. And so there's Frank, and this voice just falls out of his face, and it hurt, didn't it? Because Frank did this voice, and I just about fell off my chair. I looked at him, and I went, what? And ruined the take because I was so flabbergasted that this voice was coming out of his mouth. And I said, oh my God, that's you. And he looked at me and he laughed. He's such a gracious guy. And he's so down to earth and so friendly and very soft-spoken. And so we got to chatting afterwards, and I very quickly came to realize and appreciate just the massive, monstrous talent that Frank Welker is. But yeah, so that was my very first start in cartoons, and
So, you know, it's funny, you mentioned obviously there that it's your 30th anniversary of moving to LA and, you know, becoming a voice actor.
yeah,
It's also another 30th anniversary,
yes,
Transformers,
yes,
and
coincidentally,
Turtles.
there you go, yeah.
So are you just having a year-long party?
Yes,
Every day is your birthday.
That's right. That's right. This year is, it's really sort of crazy for me, thinking that it was exactly 30 years ago that I made the decision to move out to LA because it was in, let's see, what's the day, about the 10th or so? Yeah, so it was in another week, 30 years ago that I went out during the Olympics in LA. In 1984, talked to some people, found a little place to rent in Glendale, California. And 2 weeks later, I was moving there. And boom, so that happened. And then, in fact, once I got Inspector Gadget and started auditioning for some other shows, I remember auditioning for a little show called Muppet Babies. And, I didn't get a part on it, but in fact, it ended up being Frank Welker who got the part of Baby Kermit. That darn thing. But that's when I started auditioning for shows, and I remember Wally Burr was doing G.I. Joe at the time, and he was doing Muppet Babies. And Wally Burr's a voice director, you might have heard of him. And also directed a show I did called Gem and the Holograms. Yeah, it was one of the early shows I did. I did the voice of Riot, Laura Llewellyn on that. And huge, massive, blonde, hair. He was the rocker that I never was and never will be. But and Transformers, which I ended up auditioning for and got the part of Rewind, which was just in a couple episodes back then on G1, and then. And all those, the 30th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles, it's the 30th anniversary of the comic book when Eastman and Laird drew their first comic back in, I think, May of '84. And then the Ninja Turtles cartoon I auditioned for in, I want to say, '87. And we did that first 5-part miniseries. So yes, it's a year of 30th anniversary this year for me.
So do we have any fans of Rewind in the audience?
Oh,
yeah. Could it possibly be
three? Yeah.
Do you know if he just died a horrible death?
Rewind did. Oh, I guess. I'm always the last to know.
Right.
How did that happen?
Anybody want to tell him how he died? Yeah. He chopped his best friend's arm off, stuck himself in an airlock with a suicidal maniac, pulled himself out into space, and then got blasted by a missile.
I hate it when that happens. Jeez.
It's just one of those days.
It's a bad day when that happens.
Yeah. So, anybody got any questions for Townsend? I've got a gentleman down in front here. Patience, young sir, the microphone, look at the police walking.
Yes, 1 moment, please. Yes? Oh.
Why don't you run around twice more, and then you'll get your daily allotment of exercise. Okay.
Hello, yes. So if you have to put a face on Dr. Claw, what would it look like?
You can just speak up a little bit. This is one thing, yeah, so if you can ask questions nice and loud, because I am, after 10 years of being a DJ and all the work that I do with headphones now, and will have been for 40 years, and I am so deep, it's not even funny.
So, if you had to put a face on Dr. Claw, what would it look like?
Had to put a face on Dr. Claw?
Yeah, because we never saw his face, remember?
Right, that's true. So what would my face look like as Dr. Claw?
Now, what do you think his face would look like?
What do I think?
What do you think his face would look like?
What does his face would look like? Well, I think what am I going to say?
There's a real debate going on here.
Next time.
See, I'm not nearly as good as Frank Welker, and certainly not anywhere close to David Wallace.
Please don't make me do it again.
Yeah, that's a throat ripper, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's one of the worst things that you can choose on doing a show is when they toss you a character and they say, what do you think this guy would do? And it's an incidental for an episode, and you pick a throat ripper like that, and then you realize I can get one line out, and then my throat is shot for the rest of the day. What did you say?
I was just wondering, has that ever happened to you? Have you ever auditioned for something and then thought, it's all right, and then got the part?
Yeah, and you realize that's something I can't sustain. They
You try and do something like this where all of a sudden you realize you could do this for maybe about 2 seconds and then you can't keep it going because all of a sudden you have to
So, obviously, 30 years ago, Teenage Mutant Ninja, you did rewind for Transformers, and then 30 years ago, Turtles came out, and then towards the end of the 80s, Eastman and Laird took their dark and gritty satire superhero comic book and turned it into possibly the most popular kids Saturday morning cartoon show of all time, called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
If we don't know what that is, we might know it as the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
That's right.
Because ninjas are bad.
They're bad, and they don't allow ninjas in the UK. I
can't remember.
It's like I've never run into a ninja here, and I guess that's why.
Yeah.
All I run into here is heroes.
Well, I've heard 2 stories. One is either ninjas are bad, or was it nobody knew what a ninja was? The BBC wouldn't allow it. Thank you, Phil. Well, we went back to information when it comes to turtles. So
don't try and start telling lies now.
I've made a career of all this. So, tell us about your audition process for Turtles and becoming Michaelangelo.
Yeah, well, back at the time I was doing music, kind of sort of broken into the ranks of animation, and at the time I was doing a show called Fraggle Rock. Yeah, and it wasn't the Muppet version, not the original Jim Henson Muppet version, but a gal named Margaret Lesh, who was working with Jim at the Henson Company, had talked him into doing the show. She's the one who came up with the idea for Muppet Babies, talked Jim Henson into doing Muppet Babies, but also talked him into doing an animated version of Fraggle Rock. And so he went for it, and it's the only show that I've ever done that I had to do actually a voice match, because I'm not an impressionist, I'm a terrible mimic, but for some reason it was the one that I was sort of able to nail, and so I was doing the character, several characters, but the main character I was doing on Fraggle Rock was the character of Gobo. Oh, Wendy, your rock dust allergy's all in your head. It's what a Fraggle does. And so I was doing Gobo and Architect and Wrench on this series. And Stu Rosen was the gentleman who was voice directing Fraggle Rock at the time. And I remember one session he came in, and in his bag, he said, "You guys, you're not going to believe this. Next show I'm going to be casting and directing, and I'll bring you guys in on it to audition. But take a look at this." He opens his briefcase and pulls out an early issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, this is in 1980, it had to be in 87, I'm guessing. And he showed us this comic book, and none of us had ever heard of it before. And of course, we looked at it and thought that we were going to rip this off as rocker. And we looked at the title of this, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you got to remember this is back in the days of My Little Pony, Strawberry Shortcake, and Care Bears and things like this. It was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was just a little off the deep end for us. And of course, we all rolled our eyes and thought this thing would never succeed. But of course, we'd love to audition for it. So he brought us into audition, and before we knew it, Rob Paulson was also on Fraggle Rock at the time, and Robbie and I both got parts on this new show, Ninja Turtles, along with Barry Gordon and Ken Clark. And we had no idea, obviously back then, that it was going to have any popularity at all, or certainly go on to become the juggernaut that it was and become so iconic. It was for a generation then and for several generations since. But
I'm going to ask, for me, like growing up, born in 1982, so I came into Transformers, but by the time I had to really cognizant of what was going on, the Transformers stage was starting to die down. I lived through Turtle Mania. Okay? My mother hates you guys. Having ordering toys from the United States.
Right, exactly.
As a voice actor, what was it like to be involved with it at the time? This monster of a franchise, which just seemed to just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, well, you got to understand that, like I said, in the beginning, we had absolutely no idea that it was going to turn into what it turned into. And so when we first recorded David Wise, the writer, had written the 5-part miniseries, which was going to be the pilot. And so we recorded these first 5 episodes, hoping that the thing would get picked up. It did. Got put on the air the next year, and you know, we thought, well, maybe this thing, you know, we could see a couple of seasons out of this, hopefully. And Playmates Toys started putting out the toys. Of course, we started trying to snap up the action figures as quickly as we could, not knowing how long they might last. You know, so I started buying them, went to Toys R Us, every time a new character would come out, stick it in my collector's trunk. And within a couple of years, we started realizing with each season that got picked up for a new season, that this thing has really got some legs to it. And, you know, of course, this is long before the internet, long before these sorts of collectors conventions and animation conventions and comic conventions and stuff. So, you know, we weren't really doing any personal appearances as such. Had no real way of knowing the impact it was having, except whether it was getting any, you know, good ratings, whether the toys were selling, which we would hear from, you know, the toy company, because you were always hoping that your toy would do well, otherwise you were afraid to kill off your characters. It seemed to happen often on G.I. Joe and Transformers. If it didn't do well, then they rent your character out of the series. But yeah, we started hearing that the ratings were good. We were in syndication initially and then went to network, which is highly unusual. For a cartoon series, normally it's the other way around. You start on network and you go to syndication. So there were always indications that the show was starting to, you know, get a bit of a fan base and a bit of an audience. And we get fan mail too. That the studio would bring to us at the recording sessions and say, God, you guys, you got to see, you know, what's going on out there. You know, so we started getting a sense of it. And, you know, 2-3 years into it. Started looking pretty good, and then we heard that they were going to do a feature. And we thought, well, a feature, obviously, they're not going to have real talking turtles, and we heard that it was going to be live action, not animated. And we figured they're going to be people in suits. We are the voices of the turtles. They're going to use us for this. We're going to be in movies now. Yeah, baby! And it got closer and closer to the launch of that first feature, and none of us were getting any phone calls. We couldn't understand why. And so our agents checked into it and come to find out that they didn't want to use the cartoon voices. They wanted to have their own voices for the feature, and so we didn't have anything to do with that. And other than our original series, none of us had anything to do with the Turtles franchise ever again, except for Rob Paulson, God bless him, who is now on the New Ninja Turtles show for Nick as Donatello, which I just think is the best. Yeah, it's an hilarious show, too. So, yeah, and he well deserved it, man. There's a more talented guy in this business.
So, I know we're a Transformers convention, but I've got one last question.
Oh, this is Transformers.
Right, yeah. Transformers continuously evolve. So we have the new generation of Transformers, and Optimus Prime might be a fire truck, or it might be a small truck, or it might be a young character. The Turtles remain the same. The smart one, the leader, the bad attitude one, the party dude. Yeah, spray that one, that's it. And every time it constantly comes back with the same formula, it's a massive success. What do you attribute that to?
You know, I just think that the characters, you know, were well defined early on, and I think that part of that is because of the cartoon series. You know, they weren't as well defined in the original comics from the start. the comics were black and white, so they weren't defined by the colored bandanas. That was a cartoon convention. Another convention was the different weapons and such. And so I think the delineation of the characters, the definition of the characters early on, you had the leader, you had the party dude, you had the wise ass, you had the Donatello Doug's machiners, the machine geek, and I think that kids related to that. Plus they were action, plus they were weird, and they all had weapons that were highly relatable to a 6-year-old. I mean, what 6-year-old doesn't have a sai or a set of nunchucks, right? So weapons go a long way.
Anybody got any questions? Joel, we've got quite a few hands up here. This lady down here.
All right, dudette.
Hello.
Totally bodacious. Yeah, cowabunga!
All over this convention. I know to have this question, I'm really sorry. As the first group of people to sort of give the Turtles a voice, every incarnation since has stuck to the same sort of, Mike is very surfer, Raph's very dunking. Was that something that you guys chose to do, or was that something you were asked to do?
Yeah, we were asked to do it. Early on, when we first auditioned for the show, they like I said, when you audition for a cartoon, they have a picture of the character, and a description of what the character is, and then some sample lines that you audition with. And in fact, I saw somebody just the other night, one of the guys, I forget who it was, who's volunteering here this weekend, is quite a collector and has the original cast sheet from Transformers, from the original Generation 1 cast sheet, and it's got the breakdown of all the characters, and handwritten next to each one is a little bit about what this character's description was. And like next to Optimus Prime, it says, was it Optimus John Wayne? Yeah. And it was fascinating. Well, that's the kind of thing. And back then they didn't even have pictures of those characters. It was just a description. So when we auditioned for Turtles, they gave us a little character description, and indeed for Michaelangelo, they said he's a surfer dude, he's a little laid back, and they used the reference of the character Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the character that Sean Penn played. And I was familiar with that, so I thought, all right, yeah, maybe he's not quite so burned out, you know what I mean? But he's definitely got that, it's a little thick and a little slow, and a little, but definitely, all right. And so yes, that's something that they dial in for you right from the beginning, and then it's a matter of kind of how close you can get to what it is you think they're looking for, and whether they think that you're close to that. So yeah, so all those things were pretty well spelled out for us. Now I will say, David Wise, again the writer who wrote so many of the episodes of Ninja Turtles, and wrote the first 5-part miniseries. Has said, and was just even on a thread on Facebook just the other day, was saying that, like with Rob Paulson, he could write Raphael as sort of a snarky, smartass, but Rob brought so much more to this character than even David, was sort of able to envision. That once Rob defined Raphael, that it almost made it easier for David to write these lines for Raphael, and it became this great sort of symbiosis. And he was saying the same thing for Krang. That when Pat Fraley did the voice of Krang, the character of Krang in the show, that David had envisioned him as much more of a deep voice, sort of evil character, and it was Pat Fraley who came up with this, wacky, thing, and it ended up becoming so much more, than what was originally envisioned. So yes, we're given a place to start with it, but it doesn't necessarily end up there. And we've got a great deal of freedom in most cases to really try and take the character and run with it and create as much as we can with that character. So yeah, good question. Thanks.
Put your hands up. we've got this gentleman down here with his hand up. Can you just keep your hands up? Can we get a microphone over this side, please? Yeah, okay, up you go.
I don't know if it's all, but I have a question and so does Frost.
Okay.
Okay, my question is, when you were Sentinel Prime on Transformers Animated, did you how did you react to losing your head?
How did I what?
How did you react to the episode that you lost your head?
How did that happen?
How did you react when on one episode of Transformers Animated, you lost your head? Lost your head.
How did I said, it's just another day in cartoon land. Here we go, yeah.
And first that's a question, and I quote this, his words, not mine. Are you and the Sentinel Prime and the flesh creature known as the Tick related in some way? Because they look so similar.
Well, first of all, you're assuming that the Tick was a flesh creature.
It's something, not mine.
Yeah.
I think it's the chin, isn't it? I think it's the chin that gives it away.
Yeah, the chin and the color. Yeah. As I understand it, and I had heard this later, I didn't realize this going in, but the producers and writers of Animated were fans of the Tick. And so when they were bringing Sentinel Prime back into the series, they wanted me to do the part, and so they actually modeled the character to look not just like the Tick, but have characteristics of the Tick. You know, the blue is where that came from, the chin is where that came from, and they also wanted the characteristics of Prime to be sort of very Tick-ish. You know, and I had to resist, you know, just doing a full-on Tick. You know, wait, I've already done this guy once. Like, you know, I didn't want it to sound just the same, you know, so I had to switch it up a little bit. But yeah, that's where that came from. That was intentional. And I didn't realize that going into it, and then I heard somebody say that afterwards, and I thought, wow, that never occurred to me, and I wonder if there's any truth to that. And found out that there was, yeah.
Right there, there's a gentleman just over here. And then we'll come to you next. Yeah.
I was just wondering, where am I looking? Oh, there you are. Hey.
Do you have any funny stories or further memories from the original Ninja Turtles puppet sessions? Do you have any favorite memories or funny stories from the original Turtles puppets?
From the Turtles? Oh my gosh. I mean, there were just, you know, we did almost 200 episodes of Ninja Turtles. And I'm so bad with my memory is almost as bad as my hearing. But we just had so much fun doing the episodes and doing the whole series. I remember James Avery, God bless him, you know, early on, before he got Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, was such a delight to work with. And I remember being so surprised that this man was really a trained Shakespearean actor. A lot of people didn't realize that, but you know, he was such a terrific actor and a really kind soul, but had just the best laugh. You know, we had so many great times together on that show. But as far as like specific memories and stuff, hey, listen, I've got old video, because this is back, you know, before camcorders, but I had a video camera and portable video deck that I used to take to sessions every so often, and I got old videotapes from those sessions back in the late 80s and early 90s that I haven't seen since I recorded them. So I keep threatening to, you know, go through boxes one day and look at these old videotapes and remember that. Yeah.
Okay, can we get a microphone for this gentleman back here, and then if you can take the question, yeah.
Well, we already know that Sentinel Prime and Optimus Prime had a very cold relationship.
You think it was sport?
Well, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, how did you and David Kay get along while you were recording the series?
Oh my gosh. Well, we got along great. Obviously, you know, we're portraying characters, so this is, you know, it's certainly not anything rancorous between the two of us as actors. Yeah, I remember meeting David when he came down from Vancouver, and we got along great. So being able to then go work with him on Transformers Animated was a real delight. You know, and I was a fan of his. You know, there's Optimus Prime, and so we got along great. Yeah, just because the script had us, you know, at each other's throats and sort of hating each other at every turn. It certainly wasn't true in real life.
Put your hand right, if we can take a mic down here and we'll take questions from the back. Yeah.
Hi there. If you could go back and play any character again, who would you go back to?
I'm sorry if I could.
If you could play any character again, go back and do it again, who would you go back to?
It would be a toss-up between the Tick and Michaelangelo. Yeah. I would say probably, you know, we had 10 seasons on Ninja Turtles, so I felt like I really got my fill of that. I was really bummed when the Tick was canceled after its third season, and was very much looking forward to doing more. And I was so bummed when it was canceled. In fact, one of the writers sent me, after the Tick was canceled, sent me four scripts that were going to be the first 4 episodes of the 4th season of the Tick that never got recorded. And they're hilarious, you know. Although I will tell you that also Transformers Animated. I was so bummed when it was canceled when it was, because it was right when Sentinel Prime was about to be Sentinel Magnus, and it looked like he was going to, you know, go on and, you know, be the big cheese in the next season, and then there wasn't a next season. It was like, ah, just give me one more year, please. So yeah, so there you are, between Ninja Turtles, the Tick, and Transformers Animated. Really, any one of those shows I would have loved to come back. But you know what? I've had so much fun and have been so lucky in doing all the shows that I've done. Listen, I wouldn't have minded going back and doing more Fraggle Rock, you know, Go, or Where's Waldo? You know, when I was Waldo, or I guess you guys knew him as Where's Wally? Wally, right, yeah. God bless Martin Hanford. You know, I got to be the lead character on that show. In fact, one of my greatest treasures that I've got is an actual hand drawing that Martin Hanford did for me of Where's Waldo, just thanking me for being a great Waldo. And he framed this as a tiny little drawing that he did, and he framed it himself and sent it to me. I think that's.
Did you have to find him?
I did have to find him, yeah. It was in this huge box. Yeah.
All right, I think we've got a question out here, but is there anybody else who's got? Can we get a microphone for the lady in the baseball cap down here, and we'll take your question next?
Right. Yeah. Oh, there you are.
I know he's back there somewhere. There's an episode of the new Turtles cartoon where the 80s Turtles have a brief cameo. Was that your voice?
Was it my voice?
In that episode?
It totally was, yeah. It was all of us. Yeah, it was me, and in fact, the day that we recorded that, it was just me and Barry Gordon in the studio at Logan. And yeah, we had a blast. It was great fun to, you know, be incorporated into the new series, so a little bit like that. And although they haven't said anything, it seems to me that they sort of left it open for maybe, who knows, maybe possibly us coming back a little bit more. To be kind of nice. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a lady over here.
Which character? The most fun? Again, I've had so much fun doing all of them, but I'm going to say the Tick. Yeah. You know. Evildoer, beware. You face the Tick. Don't count your weasels before they pop, Dink. Ooh, team!
How can you go wrong with a character who's doing his chicken?
I see. That's something great. The writing on that show was just so brilliant. Ben Edlund, coming out here is brilliant, man.
It was so unique, it was so before its time. Like, in fact, I don't think we've really ever seen anything even close to similar in terms of the level of humour that show's trying to encapsulate.
It's so unique. Yeah, it's so unique.
Townsend,
Yes, sir.
go record Tick audio dramas and just post them online for us.
There you go, yeah.
Right, okay, we've got a couple of hands over here.
Hi, Townsend, me again, Tim Rodrigo.
Hey, Phil.
Did you originally audition for Michaelangelo, or was there a different character that you were going to voice? Or was it always Michael?
Did I want to voice?
No, did they bring you in specifically for Mikey, or was it anybody else?
Yeah, well, Phil, you know what? When we auditioned for that, and we got cast, they knew that Rob Paulson was going to be Raphael. They knew that Barry Gordon was going to be Donatello. But they hadn't decided yet whether Cam Clark was going to be Michaelangelo or Leonardo, and vice versa with me. And so they were going to wait until we did the first episode of that 5-part miniseries, and then make up their mind then. And so when I showed up for that first recording session, Stu Rosen, the guy who was directing Tiger Rock, and he cast us in Turtles, and we got our scripts, and he said, Connie, why don't you take Michaelangelo first, and Cam, you do Leonardo first on this first read-through, and then after we finish the first run-through, we'll go ahead and switch parts, and then Townsend, you go ahead and do Leonardo, Cam, you do Michelangelo. And we thought, okay, fine. After we did the first read-through, the first pass, they were very concerned with other stuff that was going on in the control room. They were much more concerned with details other than what we were doing as actors. So when we went to go ahead and do another pass, another record of it, they just never had a switch back. And I asked Stu, I said, do you want me to do Leonardo on this next pass? And he said, no, just keep it the way it is right now, it's fine, we'll figure that out later. Okay, so we did the second pass on it. I remained Michaelangelo, Cam remained Leonardo, and we just never switched back. So, I mean, it really was a crapshoot. That day he could have said, Tommy, why don't you do Leonardo first, Cam, you do Michaelangelo first, and the same thing could have happened, and I would end up being Leonardo for 10 years on Ninja Turtles instead of being Michaelangelo.
Exactly, quickly, because I know there's someone else waiting, but what would a Townsend Leo of Cyber like?
Probably not unlike Cam, we've got to do something. Come on, guys. We've got to do something. It always seems like that's what Leo was always saying. We've got to do something. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Something like that. And Cam would have been a great Michaelangelo, trust me. I think he did a better surfing dude than I did, so.
Gentlemen over here.
Okay, during the tick, there's a lot of guest voice actors. Was there anyone you're particularly fond of acting against, when you were the tick? I'm sorry, say that again? There was a lot of guest actors when you were making the tick.
When we were doing the tick?
Of acting against.
We had guests on the show. Often, yeah. I mean, Tony J was Scarface Chippendale. Ed Gilbert was El Cid. Like I said, Marissa Marsh was Evil Midnight Bomber, What Bombs at Midnight. There's Ronnie McDowell was the Bread Master. I could be back on all kinds of great characters and guests that we had on the show, and they're all terrific and all brought amazing stuff to the show. Listen. One of the highlights of my career, when I was a kid, not a kid, but when I was in high school, I used to be a huge fan of an improv group called the Firesign Theater. And I had met Phil Proctor, one of the guys in Firesign Theater, when I first moved to town in 1984. When I started working in 85, I did a session with Phil, and I talk about being starstruck. I'm typically not starstruck of like real movie stars, but of guys that I grew up with. They were tended to be announcers like Danny Dark at NBC and Ross Butler, who was on so many of the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Guys like this were the folks that I was really starstruck by. Well, I was starstruck meeting Phil Proctor, and so when we got the tick, turns out that Phil was on a couple episodes with us, and the producer of the tick at the time, Hank Tucker, was a big Fireside Theater fan as well. And he said, hey, we got talking about it. He said, what do you think? Let's see if we can try to get all 4 guys from Fireside Theater. Oh, no way, that'd be awesome. And so we did. So Fireside Theater ended up doing 3 or 4 episodes with us. It was an absolute highlight for me. So yeah, we got some great guest actors to come and be on the show, and they always, just knocked it up to the next level. It was so fun. Yeah.
This lady again.
Again.
I'm sorry. This is not happens to a podcast, just get nice. As somebody who's done theatre and live action and voice acting, do you find that it's more difficult to act with just your voice, or better?
It's just different. Yeah, being on stage, and I'm just now getting back into theater. Last year I did a Eugene O'Neill play, Our Wilderness, about a year ago, and it was the first time I've been back on stage in 30 years. Prior to that, I was in Pirates of Penzance in the summer of 1983. Yeah, I played Frederick in that. And had been missing theater all these years, so I got back on stage last year, just did a show recently for the Hollywood Fringe Festival. And I am really digging being back into theater, but I'll tell you, it's completely different. I can't say one is easier than the other. They're just very different. It's not that voice acting is more difficult. It's just that sort of takes, I want to say it takes a different skill set, even though it's all acting. But one of the things that I've always loved about voice acting and about voiceovers and doing what I do, and I think one of the reasons why I loved being a voice actor primarily, for the last 30 years, is that when you act with your voice, you have to use your imagination. And the people listening, I do some radio drama too, and I love radio dramas because for the listener, it requires you using your imagination. And as an actor, it means you have the opportunity to create a character. Doesn't matter what you look like. All it matters is what you sound like. And you can kind of create whatever sort of character you want. So the challenges are a little different for voice acting as they are as opposed to being on stage or in front of a camera. They're just different, but both are equally appealing to me.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Going once? Going okay. That was yesterday.
That was yesterday, yeah. Okay, here's a tough one for you.
Okay. Oh, not a tough one.
If Michael Bay called you up to be one of his franchises, whether it be Transformers or Turtles, which one would you pick?
If you wanted me to be in one?
Yeah.
It depends on what he wanted me to be. I'll tell you what I would love. And listen, I take either. But what I would have loved, and Sammy Sedek and I were talking about this, is I would have gotten a huge kick out of being in the Turtles movie that's out now as just a little cameo having nothing to do with Michaelangelo or my being, in the book, but just like a little Easter egg. I think that'd be great, being an Easter egg in a Michael Bay film.
I'll set the shot up for you. New York City. There's a barbershop quartet standing in the street.
Ah, there you go. It would be the 4 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we could have done that too.
See, this is why I should be doing it instead of Michael Bay.
Amen, brother. But how hilarious would that have been? Nobody knowing. But then all of a sudden finding out, those guys, the 4 guys who were in that, 10 seconds of film, seeing the barbershop quartet, those are the original voices of the Ninja Turtles.
You could be the next Stan Lee.
That's right. From your lips to Michael Bay's ears. This could be the next Stan Lee, right?
So, I feel like we've barely touched on Transformers anime, but obviously we took the part of Sentinel Prime. How did the audition process go for that, returning back to Transformers after all these years?
Well, and again, you mean for Sentinel Prime?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, as I remember, it really wasn't so much an audition because I went in to read for them, but it was, I think, really more to just make sure that it was going to fit with, what their idea was. But because they wanted to make it very sort of tick-ish, they were just bringing me in to read. And Sue Blue, God bless her, Sue has directed almost more episodes of animation than anybody else that I've done. And she directed all the Ninja Turtles, she directed all the Tick, she directed Transformers Animated. And so there was Susie, when I went in to read for this. And so there wasn't so much an audition process from the get-go. It was more just kind of a meet and greet.
I wonder if maybe, in that sense, there was even more pressure on you as an actor to deliver what the expectation was already there. The job was yours, you just had to prove that,
Right, that's where it gets dicey. Yeah, because you feel like you've almost got more to lose. It's like, what if I don't get this? It's like, this is not going to look good. It's also not going to feel good. But fortunately, it worked out, and being able to work with some old pals and some new pals. I hadn't, prior to that, I hadn't worked with Tom Kenny before, so it was great working with him. Hadn't worked with David Kay, even though, I was a buddy. It was great working with him, and had worked with Tara Strong before. It was great working with her. So, it was just such a wonderful cast, both yeah.
Now, last question then, as a voice actor, obviously, if you've got any questions, just stick your hand up, because I'm going to wrap up in just a second. But, given the fact that a voice actor can change and doesn't have to perform a physical performance, if there was one fictional character that you've yet to play who you would love the opportunity to have a go at, who would it be?
A fictional character.
You can't say Batman, because everybody picks Batman.
Batman would be fun, you mean a comic book character?
Well, I mean, if you had the opportunity, yeah, comic book, or maybe perhaps there was a part that you've seen in animation that you would have loved to have had the chance.
Okay, and you don't consider Barack Obama a fictional character?
Well, I've never seen him in the flesh.
Has anybody? I'm drawing a blank. I can't think of anybody.
Well, I didn't think I saw you. Ladies and gentlemen, if there are, is there anybody else who's got any last questions? Going once.
Going twice. So,
ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand. Townsend Coleman.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. You guys are the best. I love being here.
Yes, we are.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the like button and leave us a comment below. Also, spare a moment to share this video on Twitter, Facebook, and all your social media pages. To get updates on all of our latest videos delivered straight to your inbox, subscribe now using the link on the screen.